Photography as we know it is changing fast. People, the way they do photography is changing super fast. What's up, guys? Let's talk about the future of Nikon, Canon, and Sony. So I'm in the tech industry. A lot of you guys probably don't know. I've been doing that for about 30 years. I'll run through that, but I'm seeing some kind of trends with the big three that kind of they're putting in roadblocks and they're doing some other things to kind of fortify their position, but not necessarily doing a whole lot of R&D and emerging technologies. Let me give you a little bit of my background, and then we'll talk about kind of method to the madness. So education-wise, associates in electronic engineering, radiation health physics, radiation protection, bachelor's computer information systems, master's MBA, master's in computer information systems, and ABD, PhD in computer information systems, specializing in artificial intelligence and information security. So with all that junk out of the way, let's talk about the industry as a whole. So for the last 30 years, I've been in the tech industry and seen a lot of changes. But knowing that, I kind of run into two people. So working as a contract consultant, you go on a lot of the floors and you offer up solutions on how to become more efficient and also work through with developers and that. And there's two kind of sets of, I guess, responses you get when you're working with, let's say, underwriters or accountants or anybody that's not really super into the tech field. Is you get the naysayers. This can't be done. Oh, it can't be done, this, that, and the other thing. And then you get the other people, the other 10 or 20%, they're like, oh, I kind of see what you're saying. And they position themselves. So it always works out better for the individuals that are adaptive and kind of see the future and instead of the reactive ones. It's always the ones who bury their head in the sand that it ends up getting to me in the worst. And looking at that in the tech industry, watching whole floors of people just kind of bury their head in the sand, and then later it becomes a lot worse for them and change. And then every once in a while you get a guy like, so you're going to integrate a system and they're going to need to know accounting and information technology, right? Like, yeah, it's going to be kind of an integrator. And they'll ask, can I do that job? I said, dude, you'd be perfect for that job. And then that's the success stories of that, guys or people who take that in there. And you're probably saying, why does this relate to the camera industry? Well, there's a lot of parallelisms there. And it's just not individuals, it's actually corporations and companies. If we look at, for instance, Best Buy, or I should say, no, Blockbusters, that chain, Sears, all those guys went out of business because they didn't adapt to the situation. More so, it's ridiculous what Blockbusters and how they buried their head in the sand on technology of streaming capabilities like Netflix. They could have bought Netflix, was up for sale, asked them to buy them for $20 million. Blockbusters turned them down. Netflix got so popular, what did Blockbusters put up roadblocks? They started putting in, working with partners in Hollywood to blockade, don't sell them any of your sitcoms, don't give them any of your movies, they're gonna run you out of business. They went to the government, trying to do government and put barriers in front of Netflix so they wouldn't be successful. They spent more time and energy creating roadblocks than looking at research and development and emerging technologies, and it screwed them. It was the same thing with Sears. At the same time, they had a 20-year death spiral or 30-year death spiral. They had at one time more money than any company on the planet, and they squandered it away because they just didn't want to change. So getting into the photography side, what does this mean? I've seen the same thing with photographers going from film to digital. It's not enough resolution, the skin quality is not there, medium format's not going to be as good. And 2000 came around, 2007, some of these guys finally got their act together, but a lot of them lost their business, their portrait photography, their high school graduate, because they were so slow at the turnaround and that. And you looked at how this evolved, and you're like, dude. And it's kind of a note. People did not, the film guys, some of the film guys did not make it out of that transition, and that some were hurt seriously. But it also goes to the companies and the corporations, you know. People initially were thinking, well, mirrorless cameras, it won't work. I need an OVF. Digital image stabilization is junk. In-body stable. I need lens stable. I need all this. Like, dude, it's coming. Oh, sure, they have a 1K screen now, but now they have a 5 megapixel screen that looks brilliant. That's not the total solution, But just think about how backwards some of these companies are. Nikon about 5 years ago said they weren't going to go mirrorless for their flagship cameras. Like, this is their head, their CEO or whoever was in charge. We're not going to go there. And their stock like took a hit. They had people jumping off their camera system going to Sony. Sony took the leadership in mirrorless full frame cameras at that time. And they started getting Olympic sponsored. Like, it was the whole thing. Until this year, they come out with the Z9, which is a fabulous, camera. But it kind of makes you think, like, who's driving these companies when you don't see that? But it's more so if we look at the point and shoots with the industry and the big three, Sony, Canon, Nikon. They're not making any of these. They're afraid of doing any small sensor because of the cell phone and that. And they're like, well, we'll just double down on bigger sensors, higher resolution, and bigger lenses to compensate for this. But there's some problems and there's some logic to that decision making. Now, the big three have missed out on emerging technologies like there's no tomorrow. There's the DJI drones, there's the DJI handheld objects where you have gimbals and you have cameras hooked up to it. You got drones that are doing fabulous work for Hollywood. Don't care, it's not an interchangeable lens thing. They missed the GoPro thing. They missed these small cameras that will do multiplicity of things because they're stuck in this world of, well, we build interchangeable lenses or point and shoots. That's what we do. We're not going to waste any time or energy on that when the industry's changing around them. Yeah, there's a lot of different change happening, but more so is the thing is the technology would allow a point and shoot, much like the Canon SX740, 960 millimeters. You could get an equivalent of an f2.8 at 960 millimeters with an ISO of 50. This would be an awesome product. Yeah, something this small, this size, and it would work. The tech's there. The technology is there. You could apply what they have. I'll show you a quick image. This is a photo, and an individual comes into the room and they're like, wow, it's on a digital camera. It's like, wow, that's a nice photo. I'm like, yeah, I took it with the iPhone. Really? And then if you look, there's bokeh there. It looks like it's shot with a 50 or 75 mil f.1.8. And I was like, wow. And so all the technology exists to create a really cool small camera. They just don't want to cannibalize, or they just don't want the R&D, and they don't want to do some of these things. So you could take the portrait mode from the iPhone that does the artificial bokeh, and things are coming up, the technology where you're going to be able to do different lenses, famous lenses and things like that. You can take the high res mode from Olympus, and even the cameras can do that now, or it's coming, to where you take a 12 megapixel image, generate a 50 megapixel image. Not only that, you can get an ISO of 25 or 100 and get rid of the noise by compressing all these images. So you take 50 of the images and compress them down into one shot, and you got low ISO of like 25. So you got a small camera, 960 millimeters, that gives you a look of like a f2.8 at that focal length, ISO 25, 50, 60 megapixels. The naysayers right now, but you won't be able to do it for the fast-moving subjects, you won't be able to do this. There's always excuse to change. But the thing is, it's totally possible. Work out the kinks, it will happen. The problem is the companies, the big three, don't see this. They'll probably see this as cannibalizing their product. Being that Canon has a $20,000 1200 millimeter lens. They have a $16,000 800 mil lens, and they have a $12,000 600 mil f4 lens. How many people are going to afford that? They're in a shrinking market. People know this, and they've got to put in a lot more money in their R&D and emerging technologies. Photography as we know it is changing fast. People, the way they do photography is changing super fast. Cell phones. Get to that. Boiling a frog is kind of tough. You throw it in hot water, it just bounces out. But if you get them used to change, it's much slower. So Microsoft used to give us free products at the university, and we could use those. And then when we get out, we're like, what products do you know? Well, I know Microsoft, and I know this. Well, you go ahead and do it in that. You've already kind of suggested it. People are used to it. You have a bunch of 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds that do this kind of photography. I'm 50 some years old. Most of the people that watch this channel are 45 to 55. I know the demographics. The iPhone guys, Apple do not care about us guys. They're looking at the future. Get an 8-year-old on it and they got 40 years of photography, 40 years of doing this. Us, well, how much are you going to do? So Apple, I should say, Sony and Nikon and Canon's philosophy is, hey, you're catering to a smaller segment that's kind of dying off. And that's going to be an issue. So just want to let you guys in on this, see what you think about this. I'm kind of curious on if all this made sense. Yeah, technology, the change, it's a bulldozer, man. You can't ignore it. You can't put your head in the sand or you'll get steamrolled. Anyway, guys, comments, questions, concerns down below, and I will see you next week.